Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh, and in this series we discover the lore, backstories and characters of Overwatch's heroes. In this video we're looking at Brigitte's story. A hero's daughter and raised in the company of heroes, Brigitte Lindholm grew up as one of the Overwatch generation. Raised between the heroics of her father's friends and his own difficult relationship with his engineering past, Brigitte has found her own path, and is now joining the fight to make the world a better place, alongside her godfather, Reinhardt Wilhelm. In this video, I'll tell the tale of Brigitte's full lore so far, whilst sharing some thoughts and context from the rest of the Overwatch story. Roughly 26 years ago from the present day, as the Overwatch strike team brought the first Omnic crisis to a close, it would usher in a golden age of prosperity and peace of around 2 decades to the world. Children born during this time were dubbed the Overwatch generation to some, and Brigitte Lindholm was one of these. People who grew up looking up to the heroes of Overwatch, as the organisation initially taught them that heroes could be real. Born perhaps shortly after the end of the first Omnic crisis to Overwatch's chief engineer Torbjorn and his wife Ingrid, the youngest daughter of the Lindholm family was the first child to show an interest in mechanical engineering. Although he would turn out to be one of the heroes of the first Omnic crisis and beyond, it is perhaps no surprise that Torbjorn's other children would choose not to follow in their father's footsteps. Unquestionably a genius in his field, Torbjorn's legacy, however, was not purely of his heroism. He was both world-renowned and perhaps also world-infamous for the weapons and robots that he created in part, with some deeming him as much to blame for the destruction the Omnics had caused as anything else. With the world mostly kept secure by Overwatch, the more stable environment allowed scientific growth to bloom once again, with Overwatch itself even expanding into medical research, space exploration and climatology amongst other scientific fields. As she grew up, Brigitte spent much of her spare time in her father's workshop, learning directly from him and honing her skills, with various family cats clearly unwilling recipients of her prototypes. Whether she got it to be able to fly, we don't know for now. However, her aptitude for engineering was certainly like that of her father's, but Brigitte's primary interest was in making armour and defensive systems rather than the weapons that her father had brought to the world. As she grew up, Brigitte would have been amongst Overwatch and its heroes, with one looming larger than the rest: her godfather, father's close friend and fellow Overwatch agent, Reinhardt Wilhelm. A close friend of the family, Reinhardt told Brigitte tales of heroism and chivalry as she grew up, and she seemingly loved what Torbjorn liked to call his true stories. Reinhardt, after all, was the man who had saved her father's life just before she was about to be born, in a mission to clear out some remaining Omnic resistance in Turkey, presumably shortly after the end of the first Omnic crisis. Operation White Dome went awry when a 4-man strike team under Captain Anna Amari was ambushed. Torbjorn suffered the loss of his arm and may not have made it out alive were it not for Reinhardt's timely intervention. As much as he liked to complain about Reinhardt in a letter to Ingrid, Torbjorn made the promise that Reinhardt could name his daughter and be the godfather to her while he was in hospital recovering from his injuries. With a presumably very smart intellect of her own, supported by Torbjorn's vast experience, everyone expected that Brigitte would continue her apprenticeship and follow in her father's footsteps. But her plans may have changed due to the darkening state of the Overwatch world and its effect on her godfather, Reinhardt. Having served into his late 50s, Reinhardt was faced with mandatory retirement from combat operations. As he was forced to watch from the sidelines, times in the world grew darker, and the tales that he had told Brigitte of heroes, of chivalry, became less applicable to the organisation that he had loved and served for many a year. Reinhardt was to many the heart and soul of Overwatch itself. As the organisation came under suspicion of corruption and sedition, it was battered from within and without by controversy, by allegations of severe abuses of power, and much more. 6 to 7 years ago from the present day of the Overwatch world, Overwatch fell apart in a spectacular fashion. Its Swiss HQ was destroyed, said by some to be in an altercation between Morrison and Reyes, with both men going missing, presumed dead. After Overwatch was disbanded, Reinhardt was not content to sit by while the world fell into ruin and disorder. He said that he would become a knight-errant, like the chivalric ideals of old, like a Don Quixote of the modern era, wandering the land in search of adventures in pursuit of honour and to bring justice. Before he left, Brigitte surprised him by asking him to join as his squire. Reinhardt accepted, with Brigitte confirming her father's perhaps joking fears before she was born that hopefully she wouldn't take after Reinhardt too much. As his travelling companion and squire, Brigitte had many responsibilities, the most important of which initially was the repair, maintenance and upkeep of Reinhardt's Crusader armour. As Torbjorn, her father, had designed the latest version of it, Brigitte would have been very familiar with its intricacies. But by the events of Reinhardt's comic Dragon Slayer, it appears that the armour, without new parts and with the sheer age and amount of use it had, was on its last legs. As the two travelled around Europe, we saw Brigitte also doing other duties for Reinhardt, such as finding local intel and keeping an eye out for him, as the two brought justice to a small town overrun by a gang known as the Dragons. As Brigitte travelled with Reinhardt, she found herself also taking on an even greater responsibility, looking out for Wilhelm himself. Reinhardt's over-enthusiasm and natural bravery, although tempered by years of experience since the first Omnic Crisis, would still get him into scrapes. Even as his body was breaking down from years of combat, the old knight still wanted to bring justice, regardless of the odds against him. Realising that her repair work and support could only do so much to keep both Reinhardt and people safe, rather than be a helpless bystander, Brigitte decided the best way she could help was to become a warrior in her own right. While she was trained in combat by Reinhardt, Brigitte began to build her own suit of armour in secret. As Winston sent out his recall from Watchpoint Gibraltar, Brigitte and Reinhardt went to Eichenwalde, where, against Brigitte's protestations that Reinhardt had been thrown aside by Overwatch, in a flashback to when he said goodbye to his commander and friend Balderich for the last time, he said it was his duty to answer. As Reinhardt answers Overwatch's call, the question is, will Brigitte go with him? No longer sitting on the sidelines, Brigitte now fights at Reinhardt's side to protect both him and any others in need, as knight and squire journey to make the world a better place, one battle at a time. Thanks for tuning in to my Brigitte lore summary. Do throw a like, subscribe for more if you enjoyed, comment what you think of her story in the comments below. I usually do these with voice lines and interactions too. Check out the entire series of Overwatch's heroes lore, interactions and voice lines for all other Overwatch heroes here. I'll be doing updated versions of these soon too. Brigitte's voice lines and interactions will follow just as soon as I can access the files. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.